It's Saturday, January 6th, 2024. You're watching Co-op for Two, and we're continuing our playthrough of The Hidden Listener. I've got the boxes here for the complete set in front of me. Here are the sets we've played so far, 1 through 7, and here are the last 5. We're playing box 8 today. So let me put these aside. We were not going to play today. At the end of yesterday's session, I said we'd take off today, but I'm trying my best to accommodate the group, a hardcore group of people that have joined us for all of these streams. And so rather than, the two options were sort of try to delay it, have a break of a week or two between games, or basically marathon it for the next few days. And that's what we're going to do instead. We're going to marathon it while it's fresh in our mind. So that means we'll be playing this for the next 5 days. Tonight, Sunday afternoon, we'll have our normal play by mail at 3 p.m. and then we'll meet again at night to play the next box of The Hidden Listener, and then we'll play Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So, and then if we have a session that takes longer than an evening, we'll have to figure out what to do there, but we're not going to take a break. We're going where the train is rolling. Let me check in with the chat, see if there's anything else to discuss before we get started. Only 12 viewers. I apologize if anyone watched yesterday and heard me say we weren't playing tonight, if anyone misses tonight's stream. So I want to touch on a couple of things before we get started here. There was some, yesterday's box was a big deal. We got finally a list of the suspects that they suspect are spies, and we now know there is a full operation to root out the spy. They don't actually want to arrest the spy. They want to discover who the Russian spy is and then isolate them and feed them bad information to send back, which seems like a reasonable plan. I guess you find a spy, you got a couple things you can do. You can either get rid of them. Feels like the least useful thing to do. You could try to flip them. If you think you can't flip them, then you feed them bad information, which seems almost the safest thing, because you flip them, you're not sure they're really flipped. But if you feed them bad information, then, and you tail them and everything, then maybe you find out who their contacts are, etc. And we learned a new acronym called MICE for evaluating how likely someone is to be turned for you, or the motivations: money, ideology, compromat, if you have blackmail on them, or I forget what the E was now. Okay, so I want to go over that quickly, yesterday's box, briefly. But before I do, I want to return to the Russian cipher. So when we got our list of potential spies, and we got more information about the bodies found, and Anna filled up some of the timeline. She's not here. She's the reason we're doing this stream early. But maybe she didn't get word that we were doing this stream, which is ironic. But either way, the point was, we circled back to our concern about whether the spy is really different than the killer. That's the assumption we've been making based on the intercepted Russian message, which said, I found a shuttle on the territory. We think means body on the territory. I hid it so that that the investigation wouldn't expose me. And there was some debate about that, like, because of this one word that seems like it's an odd translation, is it possible that we've misunderstood that note and the killer and the spy are the same person? that's hugely important for our investigation, because if there is just one person, then the motives for the killing change, everything changes. So I did go back. Perry in the channel was asking to look at this again. He had some concerns. I went back. When you do a Google, remember, we have to go from Russian to Caesar cipher, Russian OCR to Caesar cipher to translation via Google. And one of the difficulties of that is that whenever you're translating a full thing, at least on Google, not a native speaker, the translation engine tries to make guesses around any typos. And when I put these couple words from this one sentence that seems weird, when I put this found the word that was mapping to shuttle, I put it in, and Google did identify a Russian typo, and it was guessing the next closest word that it could think of to overcome the typo as shuttle. When I took a closer look at the translation, the OCR, it was another case of the N versus N with tilde. When I fixed up that letter, then we got a different word, off by one letter, but now all of a sudden we get dead person. So this seems to completely confirm our original reading of the message. It actually does say found a dead body or found a dead person. So we can confirm now that the spy writing this note is not the killer of this body, of this one body. Now, whether it's the killer of any of the other two bodies is open. And that's, in fact, quite an interesting point, which I forget exactly how it was raised on the YouTube comment by Anna. But the point was, we've been assuming that there's a killer and a spy and they're separate. But then we were thinking, did the spy kill Gretchen? And that is tempting, because Gretchen was on the spy hunting team. We got a document yesterday telling us about the 6 people that were brought in to hunt the spy. 2 from Latimer, 2 from Trent Park, 2 from Bletchley. And Gretchen was killed. This would seem to suggest, okay, now we got a real motive to kill Gretchen if Gretchen discovered the spy. But then we said, wait a second, the spy is different from the killer. So the thing that this has subtly brought out is, it's possible that you've got a killer who killed one person unrelated to the spying, and then maybe the spy has killed another. Maybe the spy has killed Gretchen. And part of the way to resolve that is to ask, when is this note about finding a body from? What is our timeline for this note? And we don't have that information until we got the diary. However, now that we have the diary, I think we can pinpoint the date of that note. And it's here. Let's see. So remember, they intercept the Russian note, but that's not about the body. That's about the V-2 rockets. It's May 16th that we get this note. And just to refresh our memory, May 16th is here. Let's see. Okay, so Amelia, who's Gretchen's friend, says, handed me a note she had found under Gretchen's mattress. I couldn't decode it. And then she goes on to say how she's talking to Penny about it. And she says she's better at codes than me. There's no guarantee this breaks down into English. So I'm fairly certain they're talking about this Russian note, which she wrote a letter to Penny, and we could confirm that even more looking at her Penny letters. But if this is true, then this Russian spy message was found on May 16th under Gretchen's bed. But that probably means that it's from before Gretchen disappeared. So probably that Russian note about finding and hiding a body was discovered by Gretchen and then hid under Gretchen's bed. So what does that tell us? It's probably referring to the first body. Remember, the first person who goes missing is Percival Raper. And it means that message was written in Russian before Gretchen disappeared. So it could very well be that Percival Raper is killed by someone, even by accident for all we know. The body is discovered by our spy and hid, and then Gretchen finds that the spy has done this, finds information about the spy, and then Gretchen is killed by the spy. So we don't know that the spy isn't killing people, killing Gretchen, and then this other male civilian we don't know about. But what we do know is that this body of Percival Raper, we believe this is the first person killed, although I guess we're not sure. The male civilian worker could have been killed first. We don't know. But the body that the spy has come across is not Gretchen's. It's a body before Gretchen. Okay, so there you have it. And I've just summarized this, but maybe we need to write on this that we think the note is about the Percival Raper's body. And maybe we'll add that here. Okay, so at least now we know that the spy could be killing people, could have killed Gretchen. Although, I will note that it does seem, if you're a spy, killing someone is a very last resort. You want to stay. The people who are spies tend not to be the killers. You don't hear too many cases where you've got a deep undercover mole who's killing people. They try to stay out of the limelight. All right, so that's that. Do we want to, let's quickly look through yesterday's documents, just really quickly skim through them to remind ourselves what we found yesterday. Note that we're going to get another diary from 1944, Lizzie's diary. We got a Grill postcard that fit over our first one that seems to now cast this first postcard in a different light. We thought this was the breakup with Carl. It helped throw some suspicion on Carl. But here she is. It seems like it was actually a message to Neely saying, I am with H, have left Latimer. Plans are in place. And then she wishes she could see her again. So certainly seems like she has close feelings towards Neely. It almost reads a little romantic, even though we know she's involved with Carl. On the other hand, a couple people have now suspected Neely. But Neely is not on our list of spy suspects, so I think probably it's not Neely. We found a letter from Penny written with lemon that ruled out Ludo someone, and then we finally got this amazing list of people they think could be the spy. And over the course of the last 7 boxes, we've got a bunch of people ruled out. And here they are. All of the people that were ruled out are on this list. Now we know Penny and Lizzie were trying to rule out people on this list. It's an old list, so they've been working on this for a while. They've ruled out Frederick Krauss, Eric Kruger, Gus Feltz, Ludo Jansing, that's the lemon note, and they ruled out Anton Ecker, which was our slight mistranslation of this T, confused us. On the remaining on the list then is Carl Neumann. That's Carl, that's the boyfriend, the undercover guy. Joseph Kupers, we don't know who that is. Stefan Wines, we don't know. Gunter Fischer, we don't know. Albert Nowak, we don't know. James Ward, we don't know. And there's Amelia Mazur, who we do know. Now, Amelia has been constantly telling Lizzie to investigate Gretchen's disappearance. So it's almost unthinkable that it's Amelia. Feels like that would be totally insane. If you're the spy, you're not pushing people to investigate things and try to dig up who the spy is. That would be crazy. So I really feel like Amelia is ruled out. That means there's only one person whose name we don't know, whose name we know, that's Carl. That's kind of heartbreaking. Okay, this just details the 6 people that were detailed to Operation Ezekiel to try to hunt down the spy, people that know enough and are trusted enough. And there's our Gretchen. She's fluent in Russian, so the note that was under her bed, she would have been able to read the Russian part of that. Now, whether she would have been able to do the decoding, I don't know. Operation Mess Pot, that's a new operation that we don't know, but this was the attempt to trick the Germans into believing that the D-Day invasion was going to be somewhere else. And that was the key plan that we've uncovered in this whole box, that they planned to trick one of the German generals into escaping and seeing a buildup in the wrong location. So that's what we're getting to. There's a whole coordinated effort to plant the idea in this general's mind that he could escape, and about the invasion, it's General von Enns. And so they're going to help him escape and seed him with bad information about the location of the D-Day invasion, which was the biggest invasion of the entire war, the thing that broke the back of the Germans. The British and American Allied forces landed on the beaches at Normandy, and it's very important for them to trick the Germans into thinking they were trying to come across in Calais. So they set up this whole complicated thing for that, more plans to do that. And Carl is involved in that. The plan is to have Carl go with this general, along with Haybitch, who they think is on their side, and help him escape. And here is the prostitute planting the idea that he could escape through the tunnel. And then we've got this very interesting thing here at the end of this letter. It's a letter that's vaguely telling us that Elizabeth Phillips, our girl, had a incident. And at the end, they say Carl Neumann will also be dealt with later. They want her removed from the house, Menzies does. And we believe that the incident was that Carl, her boyfriend, was part of this plan to trick this general, Enns, into escaping. And it's clear that Carl has now showed up at this fake prostitute house with one of the generals, and he and Lizzie have run into each other. And there's been a scene. We don't know if Lizzie freaked out, if Carl freaked out. They need Carl because he's part of this operation, but here's the colonel in charge of everything saying that this is unacceptable, what just happened. She risked the whole operation. Okay, more discussion about where the D-Day invasion is going to be. Here was mention of 3 German agents for the Allies that they're talking about. They want to plant fake information about the V2 rockets. Probably we don't need to know them, but these are probably the code names of 3 British agents that are feeding information, that wrong information to the Germans. Okay, so there we are, caught up. Anything I didn't mention that we want to talk about? It looks like the chat is reminding us that we did have a weird thing going on with Townsend. See, Townsend is running this base here at Latimer, running Latimer House. And what we noticed in this letter yesterday was that she's actually, back in 42, put on the team to track down the spy. That made us suspicious of her. It's her and Gretchen has disappeared. So I guess Catherine is on our suspicious list, even though she's not on the list that the experts have identified as potential spies. But maybe like we want to put her on our bonus list, just because she's so close to Gretchen and she's on the base here. But the experts don't think she's the spy. And of course, there's still the killer. Though, we should point out, we say killer, it's possible that the first body that the spy discovered was an accidental death. And then the spy has killed people who stumbled onto him, but probably not, right? Because if it was an accidental death, you wouldn't the spy would see that and not try to cover it up, right? Do we also consider people who may not be on the list, but who were around June 42, just thinking about who might have had the opportunity to murder in addition to deciphering codes? Well, the original killer of Percival Raper could be anyone who was around in 42. So it's absolutely, we have to consider for that original killer, and maybe the killer of all of them is not the spy and could be anyone not on that list. In fact, we suspect Peter. And we know from talking to Amelia in our diary here that Gretchen was afraid someone was stalking her. So Gretchen's boyfriend, Peter, and then someone stalking Gretchen, it certainly feels possible that Percival Raper, look at his name, was the stalker of Gretchen. And either Peter killed Raper or Gretchen killed Raper, and that's what set off the whole chain. You could imagine a scenario where Peter kills Percival Raper out of jealousy or whatever. Gretchen, the spy, finds Percival's body, hides it. Gretchen goes investigating on her own and finds the note. And then she gets killed by the spy. And we do have an unidentified body, right? But we know it's not Peter because Peter's still around. Harry says we also have the Krugers that are in that. I'm not sure the Krugers really exist. They're just the recipients of that fake letter. Jonathan says maybe Townsend could be the murderer. Gretchen found out there had been a murder by decoding the spy note and reported to Townsend, so she had to be silenced. It's possible, I guess, but it's hard to see a real motive by Townsend. We don't have one. All right, let's open this box and get started here. This box, remember, each box has a little subtitle here. This one says, "Caution, contains important news. It's actually fairly heavy. All right, let's see what we got. And then we have our 3 code wheels, don't forget. Someone pointed out that I mislabeled in our notes the code wheels, but I have since corrected that, and in order to keep track of which one came in which box. Oh boy, we got another full newspaper, it looks like. Or is it a full newspaper? It is a newspaper. If you were writing a book on Sherlock Holmes consulting detective style games, and in fact we saw it in the old 1935 Dennis Wheatley games, the use of newspapers in mystery games would be an interesting chapter. All right, let's see what we got here. Please find enclosed the latest documents recovered from the team's work in the National Archives. There were 9 government releases which appear to relate to work Elizabeth Phillips was involved with during the war. I hope the photocopies the team have made of these will be met with interest. In addition to the documents, they came upon another handwritten correspondence from Penny Vinnick, which seemed to have been sent to Elizabeth Phillips. I'm pleased to report they obtained permission to send this to you for safekeeping, along with an accompanying newspaper, which was located with the letter in the archives. The team have also enclosed a board they found, which was due to be disposed of by the archival team. They rescued it from disposal as they believe it may have some relationship to the cogs discovered so far. So a little board that the cogs are going to fit on. Okay, so we've got a newspaper. All right, so let's put everything away. It looks like the channel audience was basically correct in thinking that we're getting like a full encryption machine, because this looks like it's got space for 5 cogs. And we've got 3 so far. One goes there, one goes there, one goes whatever the numbers are. And then together they're going to create an encryption, decryption machine like an Enigma. So we should probably expect 2 more cogs before we're done. Some of them are alphabetical, some of them are random. Or random to the best of our knowledge. Okay, so we're building a full Enigma machine. It's not actually an Enigma machine, but it's close. All right, and we have a full newspaper. The newspapers are very mixed experiences because they're so dense. There's so much to look at. We know from our previous experience that this game is using real newspapers, not planting information, hiding information within the articles. I can see there's some notes here about a code. So we may not have to worry about reading this entire thing to progress. Just reading enough of it to decode whatever secret message is surely being sent with it. We'll decide what we want to do with that later. All right. Let's see. So we've got a letter from Penny, some documents, and a newspaper. And what were we told? Let me just remind myself what we're told about the newspaper. A letter from Penny here. along with an accompanying newspaper, which was located with the letter. So probably this letter has got information, a code that we have to use with the newspaper. So what have we got? We've got some liquid or something's coming through here. It's not with the lemon letter. We could see there was something on it. I don't know what this is about. Okay, so it's not dated. It is about Project Ezekiel. That's the spy hunting operation. Operation Ezekiel. Dear Lizzie, as requested, I've sent copy of D-Day paper for you. It's too bad you didn't get your copy on the day. What were you even doing to miss it? Couldn't Neely have brought you a copy? Can you believe I managed to salvage this from the library here? One of these days you'll owe me, of course. Not sure what, though D-Day will be a day everyone will remember. We liberated Europe. Though there's still an awful lot of fighting to be done, spring is nearly over. Perhaps this summer will be the last of the war, ? We can hope so. It will be good to meet up again soon. Okay, so look at the acrostic here. D-A-T-E, date, code, C-O-D-E, date code. Then it looks like T-I-P, tip, date code tip. So she's saying, look in the newspaper for a date code. These appear to be insignificant, but maybe we take one closer look at just that. Yeah, that's just a mess. Okay. But this could be date code tip or date code tip. Seems like maybe she purposely skipped this one, either stip or tip. Okay, and then we saw from the paper, wow, here's a paper of D-Day. I mean, I do think we'll probably want to look at this for the history of it. But it looks to me like it's talking about this. E, and then it sounds like maybe these are in the reverse order. 5 June 4418. So these are essentially just numbers. The only information here, they're all June, is 15, 18, 9, 3, 8, 11, 18, 21, 7, 18, 5. I do notice these are all under 26. On the other hand, E is not the... If this says 5 of June, then I think we know what this is. This does say 5 of June, not 15 of June. This is, E is the 5th letter of the alphabet. So I think maybe we're just dealing with letter of the alphabet here. Let's see if that's right. Where's I've got a better list of numbers, but letters in order, but we can probably just do it from this. Let's see. So look at the inner dial here. E is a 5. So we've got E first. Then 18 is our R. 19 is our S. 3 is our C. 8 is our H. 11 is K. 18 is our R. 21 is U. 7 is G. And then 18 is R again, and 5 is E. And then she said swap the last two. So what is she saying? Hirsch Kruger. All right, well, that's the person on our list. But we've already ruled them out. We've already ruled out Kruger. we ruled out a Frederick Krueger. Now this seems to be a redundant message to rule out Krueger. Maybe they've both ruled out Krueger independently. The third one was a 9, not a 19, you think? This one here, you think is 9, not 19? I guess you're right. If it's 9, it's an I. So Eric Krueger. All right. So, but it doesn't say ruled out. It would have. It seems like if you're writing about spies and you're ruling people out, you would do well to be clear about that in your message, whether you're saying this person is the spy or this person's ruled out. Okay, so State code tip or stip. I mean, surely she's ruling someone out. That's what all of their letters have been. But we will just note it. It's weird that this name is a name that we think was already ruled out. How do you read that? What does the channel think? Is she ruling this person out? Is it... Do we want to read some newspaper flavor first or more important letters first? I want to talk about this for a second. Okay, if I was... Occasionally we dip into sort of a little meta-analysis about the game design and designer here. If I let that bug get into my ear, I might hypothesize that what's happened is that the designers have realized that in a previous letter, it said, we rule out Frederick Krueger. And now the game designers, after sending that box, might realize, wait a second, Frederick Krueger is not one of the people we've got it mixed up. And we've given them a name to rule out that's not on the list because we really should have been saying Eric Krueger. And so maybe we need to put in to this box a clear confirmation that it was Eric Krueger that was ruled out. So if my suspicious meta-analysis kicked in, I'm thinking that that's what's happening here, that in the design, they slightly messed up, and in order to avoid confusing people, they've now had to make a second attempt to rule out the person that they meant to rule out in the previous box. That's my guess, but we don't know. Okay, so now we've got some letters. I think what we should do is, Jonathan says that seems like a reasonable idea. I think we should read a little bit of the context of D-Day. Remember, this whole last box was in prep for fooling the Germans about where the attack was going to be. And here is this is going to be a real newspaper after D-Day. Let's read a little bit about what that was like and what the papers were like. Air landing. Churchill announces successful massed air landings behind enemy in France. 4,000 ships, thousands of smaller vessels. So far, all goes to plan. 11,000 first-line airplanes. An immense armada of more than 4,000 ships with several thousand smaller craft have crossed the channel, said Mr. Churchill today, announcing the invasion. So what's the date of this? June 6th. Massed airborne landings have been successfully effected behind the enemy's lines, he said. Mr. Churchill described the landings as the first of a series in force on the European continent. The landings on the beaches are proceeding at various points at the present time. The fire off the shore batteries has been largely quelled, said Mr. Churchill. The obstacles which were constructed in the sea have not proved so difficult as was apprehended, and the Anglo-American allies are sustained by about 11,000 first-line aircraft, which can be drawn upon as may be needed for the purposes of the battle. I cannot, of course, commit myself to any particular details, as reports are coming in rapid succession. So far, the commanders report that everything is proceeding according to plan, and what a plan. This vast operation is undoubtedly the most complicated and difficult that has ever occurred. Surprise. There are already hopes that tactical surprise has been attained, said the Premier, and we hope to furnish the enemy with a succession of surprises during the course of the fighting. The battle, which is now beginning, will grow constantly in scale and in intensity for many weeks to come, and I shall not attempt to speculate upon its course. Complete unity prevails throughout the Allied armies. I guess he's giving a speech here, and there are chairs at this point. There is a brotherhood in arms between us and our friends in the United States. There is complete confidence in the Supreme Commander, General Eisenhower, and in his lieutenants, and also in the commander of the Expeditionary Force, General Montgomery. So Montgomery was the British commander. He's the one who took down Rommel in North Africa. And Eisenhower is the U.S. general who's running the U.S. side of things. The ardor and spirit of the troops, as I saw them myself embarking in these last few days, was splendid. Nothing that equipment, science, and forethought can do has been neglected, and the whole process of opening this great new front will be pursued with the utmost resolution by both by the commanders and by the U.S. and British governments whom they serve. What a plan. Okay, let's take a look at this. So there's Calais, that they were trying to trick the German government or the French Vichy government into thinking where they were going to attack. You can see it's the closest route from England, from Dover. And so that's where that's where the Germans thought they were going to attack from. Makes sense. But they didn't attack in Calais. They attacked in Normandy, which is where? Where is our Normandy? Dunkirk and Normandy? Is it? Surely it can't be up here. The newspaper would use something to show it. Why are they not showing it? Is it because they don't want? Surely the Germans know at this point where they're attacking. Battle of Dunkirk were real battles. Is this deep? I'm a little bit confused why we're not seeing Normandy. Remember, France has been occupied by the Germans, who have set up the Vichy French government. As soon as they invaded France and took it over, they built up these defenses all along the beachheads. Perry says Normandy is the entire coast below Calais. Okay, so below Calais. So I guess all of this is considered the beaches of Normandy. Okay, Germans thought they would come over here. And they really attacked this whole thing. Wow, that's a long trip to make. It must have been very tempting. Shows you how important the aspect of surprise is, that they had this quick trip across and they went to all these other routes just to have the element of surprise. I guess, the element of surprise and weaker defenses. Thousands of fighters strafed the Nazi guns, shelled by 640 guns. Tanks ashore on Normandy's coast. The Allies have established beachheads in northern France and are driving inland, according to pilots who have flown over the battle. This afternoon, the Germans announced that landings were continuing in the Seine Bay, the stretch of the Normandy coast between the two parts of Cherbourg and Le Havre. Board gamers will recognize Le Havre. Okay, so there's the port of Le Havre, very famous port in France. And where's Cherbourg? There's Cherbourg. Okay, so all along this coast here, they're talking about they're still continuing to land there. Parachute landings. All right, let's pull out. Let's see what else we got. Let's continue reading this front page, most important article here. At 9:30 a.m. today, the following communique was issued from General Eisenhower's Supreme Headquarters. Under the command of General Eisenhower, the Allied naval forces, supported by strong air forces, began landing Allied armies this morning on the northern coast of France. The statement was marked Communique Number 1. At the same time, it was revealed that General Montgomery is in command of the Army group carrying out the assault. The Army group includes British, Canadian, and U.S. forces. The King will be on the radio tonight. It was officially announced from Buckingham Palace today that the King will broadcast at 9 o'clock tonight. Hitler in command. Hitler is taking personal command of all the anti-invasion operations, according to news reaching London from underground sources. His four marshals are Rundstedt, titular commander-in-chief, Rommel, inspector general, Speer, in charge of air forces, and Blaskowitz, aiding deputy to Rommel. So Rommel hasn't been captured yet. I see. So I didn't know the dates of when they... I guess Rommel... well, wherever Rommel is, he's yet to be captured. At some point after they finish the invasion, Montgomery goes in and hunts down Rommel, the very famous strategist of tank warfare. Okay. Stories of the men who watched. Here are the stories told by the men who watched the landings. Let's read this. Fighter pilots returning from over the landing areas report that Allied infantry scrambled ashore at 7 a.m. in two areas of the French coast, apparently without heavy opposition, says Robert Richards, British United Press war correspondent at a U.S. fighter base. One of the pilots, an American colonel, William Curry, told me, I saw the first troops wading ashore at about 7 a.m. from light landing craft. From the height at which I was flying, they did not appear to be meeting heavy opposition and were covered by extensive and heavy naval bombardment from our warships. Flying fortresses were also bombing the beach, which appeared to be marshy instead of sandy. Major John Locke of Texas, who led a squadron of Thunderbolts, said, I have never seen so many ships in all my life. Flying over the harbor at one port, I counted great numbers of cruisers, destroyers, corvettes, and other craft. The constant flashes from their guns indicated that the beach was getting a heavy pounding. Behind this advance brigade, stretching in a never-ending stream across the channel, came line after line of LCTs, landing craft and tanks, escorted by corvettes and PT boats. We were never attacked by enemy airplanes, though the flak was terrific. Second Lieutenant Benson from Iowa said, the channel waters were fairly calm and the boats bounced along smoothly. They were constantly patrolled by warships and many were towing barrage balloons. Colonel William Schwartz added, When I arrived over the beach, our battleships brought all their fire to bear on the shore. The chat reminds me that, let's see, John Kingsbury said, explanations in the text. Kate, don't know what that's referring to or means. Perry says, Rommel is part of the attempt on Hitler's life on July 20, 1944, after which he was arrested and forced to suicide to protect his family. That's interesting. I guess then Montgomery didn't capture Rommel. Montgomery must have defeated Rommel, and he must have scurried back to Germany and then made an attempt on Hitler's life. Is that is Rommel part of the operation to blow up Hitler with a bomb in his bunker? Not in his bunker, at the meeting. What's the name of that movie where they fictionalize the attempt to blow up Hitler? Harry says that's right. Rommel was never caught in the battle that where Montgomery defeated his forces. Perry says yes, Valkyrie, Operation Valkyrie. So there is a movie called Operation Valkyrie, which is pretty cool, which details this plot by German generals to run a coup to assassinate Hitler with a bomb that was not successful. Okay. Let's just... So you've got 2 assignments now, 2 movies, 2 shows that you've been assigned to watch as part of the stream. The first one was a brand new Netflix documentary called World War II on the Front Lines, and now you've got Operation Valkyrie. You could always... There's a famous movie about... There are lots of movies about the D-Day invasion. There's a fairly recent one. They're sort of describing it here as they didn't encounter heavy resistance, but the modern take on that is that it was an insanely bloody battle where the ships were coming on the Normandy beaches and people were just getting killed by the anti-personnel guns that were perched on the beaches of Normandy, that they were getting devastated. And I don't know what the percentage of soldiers that were killed, but they're basically sitting ducks trying to get off their boats onto the beach with gunfire raining down on them. Okay. Let's take another glance through this newspaper, see if there's stuff we want to read here. A story, more domestic story about how London is reacting to the invasion. We might want to read some of this for flavor, but maybe we'll come back to it. Eisenhower rallying the troops. Canadian Prime Minister rallying the troops. German military commander. Let's read that. I'm sort of curious what our take was on the German. I have to figure out why it's not zooming in on my wide view anymore. What have I done? Maybe I made it too bright. Olberg tells the Germans, this is the third front in 3 dimensions. Alfred von Olberg, German military commentator, called the invasion an extremely serious 3-dimensional offensive action. In a broadcast today, he said, the invasion has begun. The day has dawned, and the tension, which has embraced the whole of Europe for the last few weeks, begins to relax. The second front, or rather the third front, has come into being. May well be that this again is nothing else but a diversionary and holding down operation designed to delude the German command with its deployment of tremendous means and to induce us to carry out premature troop transferments. Fifth front? It is just as possible that a 4th and 5th front will be established by similar landings at other sectors of the European coast, and that the front which might see the great battles of this summer will develop at some point of the Atlantic sector or might combine with the operation which was initiated today. It makes no difference whether today's action is a diversionary maneuver or a Panther's jump onto the European continent. The German command know that their defensive preparations are without any gaps. Already on the sea, and even more when approaching the European coast, the invasion troops are going into an inferno in comparison to which Dante's hell is child's play. Deep inland, another German broadcaster speculated that first the Allied High Command would make use of the river estuaries between Le Havre and Cherbourg to land further offensive formations with heavy weapons. Airborne attacks against Normandy, which, according to the reports available, are taking place rather deep inland, are obviously serving the purpose of trying to capture a number of appropriate airfields in order to enable transport gliders and other large transport airplanes to bring up further troops with heavy weapons by air. These formations would have as their assigned task to cut off the peninsula toward the south and to capture as quickly as possible the harbor of Cherbourg. I mean, military strategy is very complex. You can imagine you've got you've got Europe, France, and Germany. You need to find some route in to attack Germany. And so you need to claw back bases upon which you can transport your heavy equipment so that you can march up on land. And your strategy of where and how to capture has to be disguised. Otherwise, the enemy just moves all their forces to where you're going to attack, and then they've got it too heavily defended. So you've got tough decisions. Do you go where it's easiest to get there, but most strongly defended? Or do you try to lure the defenses away, attack somewhere else? Do you attack somewhere else as a diversion, hoping the enemy will move forces so that you could attack the way you really want to go? That's what the German broadcaster is speculating about. Eisenhower tells the French, okay, I'm very curious to read this discussion because the French government in power is, again, the Vichy French who've been taken over by the Germans, but you have to imagine there's a resistance in France, and as soon as they see their opportunity, they may try to fight the German and Vichy government from within. Chat says, the Allies were most concerned with where the Panzer tank armies would be. As it turned out, they were in Calais. Germans were trying to decide whether to move armies from East Front to the West after the invasion. Okay, let's look at Eisenhower talking to the French. Eisenhower tells the French, you will choose your own government. General Eisenhower, broadcasting to Europe, said, people of Western Europe, a landing was made this morning on the coast of France by troops of the Allied Expeditionary Force. This landing is part of the concerted United Nations plan for the liberation of Europe, made in conjunction with our great Russian allies. I have this message for all of you. Although the initial assault may not have been made in your own country, the hour of liberation is approaching. All patriots, men and women, young and old, have a part to play in the achievement of final victory. Wait for signal. To the members of resistance movements, I say, follow the instructions you have received. To patriots who are not members of organized resistance groups, I say, continue your passive resistance, but do not needlessly endanger your lives. Wait until I give you the signal to rise and strike the enemy. The day will come when I shall need your united strength. Until that day, I call on you for the hard task of discipline and restraint. Citizens of France, I am proud to have again under my command the gallant forces of France fighting beside their allies they will play a worthy part in the liberation of their homeland. Because the initial landing has been made on the soil of your country, I repeat to you with even greater emphasis my message to the peoples of other occupied countries in Western Europe. Follow the instructions of your leaders. A premature uprising of all Frenchmen may prevent you from being a maximum help to your country in the critical hours. As Supreme Commander of the Allied Expeditionary Forces, there is imposed on me the responsibility of taking all measures necessary for the prosecution of the war. The French role. Appealing for prompt and quick obedience, he said that the effective civil administration of France would be provided by Frenchmen. All citizens should continue in their present offices. When France was liberated, Frenchmen themselves would choose the form of government under which they wished to live. Those who have made common cause with the enemy or betrayed their country will be removed. In the course of this campaign for the final defeat of the enemy, you may sustain further loss and damage. Tragic though that may be, they will be part of the price of victory. I shall do all in my power to mitigate your difficulties and hardships. The heroic deeds of the Frenchmen who have continued the struggle against the Nazis and their Vichy satellites have been an example and inspiration to all of us. This is the opening phase of the campaign. Great battles lie ahead. I call upon all those who love freedom to stand by us. Together we shall achieve victory. So it sounds like they're being very strategic. They're saying, Eisenhower is saying, look, we're going to figure out when we can topple the Vichy government and the Germans in France. Hold your fire until we think it's time for you, resistance, to make your move. I don't know what the history of that is. I don't know when the resistance really kicked in to take over, but here you can see it's appealing to the French that they're going to have control of their government, where they're not trying to rule France. The alert sounded in Europe. I'm sort of curious about that. Here's a story about Montgomery. Secrets held by the troops. Tasks facing our invading armies. Okay, so I do have one more article I want to read in particular. Oh, Rome. Okay, so I want to read two more little international articles, then we'll take a break. Let's see what this one is. The alert sounded in Europe. Communique number 1 was read by John Snagg of the BBC and was immediately afterwards it was relayed in many languages over many networks until it reached every corner of Europe. As it was being read, it was announced that the alert had been sounded in Holland and then in Belgium. A British voice broke in a moment later, and it was stated that the alert had been sounded in France and then in Denmark. Salute to Norway. King Haakon, in a broadcast to Norway, stated, "Our people must not allow their enthusiasm to lead them into premature, unpremeditated acts. From now on, however, it will be of even greater importance to hinder and impede the enemy by all subtle and covert means that do not expose yourself or others. This order does not apply to organized resistance groups who are in touch with the Allied military authorities. They have been given their special orders, and they will receive further orders. These they will carry out in the knowledge that if they are in need of a hiding place or food or any other help, they will always find it. In this way, also many of you will be able to quietly take an effective part in the battle for freedom. I and my government warmly salute all compatriots who stand firm at their posts and who look forward to ever more exacting tasks in a spirit of self-sacrifice and confidence. The Supreme Allied Commander will at all times keep you informed about what is expected of everyone under his command, and over the radio and by other means, our people will continue to be in close contact with their constitutional authorities. We salute the forces which have now gone into battle. Our thoughts and warmest wishes go with them. It's kind of emotional here thinking about this. We know that they will not fail us. And we promise not to fail them. So, can someone fill me in a little bit on the history? Is Norway now occupied by Germans? I guess that's what we're understanding here. The king is probably not in Norway, but in exile. Can someone confirm this a little bit? They're basically talking to the resistance and the citizens, saying, you know, hold fire, the help is coming, and you're going to rise up at some point. The resistance has been in contact. It's clear they don't want premature. They want people to stay on the sidelines until the military can come in, and then kick into gear when you can. But I assume that the king is in exile, broadcasting to the citizens. He says, fellow countrymen, keep together and be prepared. Long live the cause of the United Nations. Long live the cause of freedom. Professor P.J. Gerbrandy, Prime Minister of the Netherlands, in a statement to his fellow countrymen, said, now that the Allied sledgehammer blow is falling on Hitler's Atlantic Wall, we are all thrilled with emotion. You must refrain from any act which might be of any direct or indirect advantage to the enemy. As soon as more forceful action is required of you, this will be made clear from here in unmistakable fashion. Similar message was broadcast to Belgium. It is interesting to me that they're not calling for people to rise up yet. And how carefully this is planned to say, wait until we give the signal and we think it can have the best effect. Here's a photo of the invasion and all the ships. Church bells ring out in America. Evening Standard correspondence, New York, Tuesday. News of the invasion was proclaimed to a sleeping New York shortly after 3:30 a.m. by a lone ship somewhere in the harbor, which blew its whistle excitedly for several minutes. In western United States, where it was still around midnight, church bells rang, crowds gathered in the street, and many communities joined in special services of intercession. Fort Dix, New Jersey, broadcast Protestant, Catholic, and Jewish prayers for loved ones. Radio stations throughout the country were on the air all night. Newspapers rushed special editions with full-page headlines, Invasion Begins. President Roosevelt was being constantly kept informed of developments. All night long, the main U.S. radio networks were giving a running account of the invasion from London. Lights snap up in Ottawa. In Ottawa, lights in the government buildings began snapping on at an early hour as service chiefs and public relations officers, hearing the reports, hurried to their desks, reports the Associated Press. My prayers are with them, was General McNaughton's comment in Montreal today. Okay, we're going to take a little break. I'll see you in 8 minutes. Okay, we're back. We're reading through a newspaper about the D-Day invasion, June 6, 1943. Perry in the chat is filling us in on a couple more historical details that I'm not familiar with. 6 Normandy beaches invaded by the Allies. The north 3 were covered by the Brits. The south 3 by the Americans. Beach code-named Utah was the largest conducted by the Americans. Utah was the most brutal and costly in lives. What was the most recent big budget movie about D-Day? There are actually 2 fairly recent ones in the last decade or so. Does anyone remember the names of those 2 movies? 2 movies that I'm thinking of. I guess you could just search for World War II invasion, D-Day invasions, but I believe one was just focused on D-Day, maybe 2 of them. That's pretty emotional stuff, thinking about these men risking their lives here, accepting that they're going to die. These soldiers in this invasion, for the most part, just had to accept that I'm going to die. This is going to be my last day, but I got to do it anyway. It's pretty serious stuff here. Let's see. Nazis arrest officers. Let's see what this is about. The Germans are arresting all French officers above the rank of major and are sending them away to Germany. Reporting this day, the Swiss journal De Genevieve says the German move began late on Friday night, says British United Press from Zurich. German army units have been withdrawn from the Haute-Savoie area of France and sent to an unknown destination. Gestapo men have arrested many prominent French civilians and Jews. Even Jewish children are being rounded up in some areas. It sounds like maybe they're afraid of that the people are going to rise up, and they're preemptively arresting anyone they think could rise up. Here we come, Hitler. Stockholm Journal, Aftonbladet, says Reuters, reported today as the Allied parachutists came down over France today, they shouted, "Here we come, Hitler." Okay, so some more articles we could read at some point. I am sort of curious to read all of these, but maybe we can put a little bit off. Let's see. French absence was according to plan. What's this? French officials, commenting on the absence of French forces from the first wave, revealed that this was in accordance with inter-allied agreement to avoid the possibility of Frenchmen being forced to fight against their countrymen. Interesting. Armistice with Vichy ended by Badoglio. The Italian cabinet yesterday canceled the 1940 armistice between the Vichy government and Mussolini in order to emphasize on the day of the liberation of Rome the feeling of solidarity between the Italian and French nations. Rommel's asparagus. Rommel's asparagus is the latest German anti-invasion weapon, according to the Berlin correspondence of Svenska Dagbladet, says Reuters from Stockholm. Asparagus is the soldier's nickname for long wooden poles which Rommel has ordered to be driven into the earth to prevent gliders or paratroopers landing. Whole forests have been planted, and Rommel himself announces that 2 divisions have put down 300,000 in the last 5 weeks. Doesn't seem like it's going to do much. Sarah, come on. If I leave plastic out, the cat just finds it and chews on it. Let's see. Monty brings it down to a matter of ABC. Okay, let's take a look at Colonel West Montgomery, the British, talking to Eisenhower. There's the two of them. Monty brings it down to a matter of ABC. A terrific party. Let's see. From Leslie Randall, the Evening Standard chief reporter. When the inside story of the planning of the invasion can be told, nothing in it will be more revealing than the part played by General Montgomery and his unshakable faith in himself and his armies. Before he left his base headquarters to lead the assault on Europe, Monty talked to a big gathering of war correspondents. He laid it down that we must not make known a word of what he said until the invasion has really got going. And he told us that he had found to be the secret of success in war and how he would fight the battle. It will be a terrific party, he said, a first-class showdown, but I'm absolutely confident we will win, absolutely. This was not the easy optimism of a general who trusts in his lucky star. He spoke with the quiet assurance of a commander who had weighed all the chances, allowed for unlucky breaks, and still had not a shadow of a doubt victory was a mathematical certainty. Since those days in 1940, when I saw the return of the British expedition force from Norway, I have met many of our war chiefs. To me, Montgomery is undoubtedly the outstanding personality. Here was a general setting out to lead the greatest combined operation in all history, and yet he was untroubled by any doubt or fear. I have never known a man who was so sure of himself. I have never met anyone who was more positive about everything he says. Montgomery does not suggest, he affirms. If you do this in war, he says, you win. If you do that, you fail. There is no room for argument. He has said it, and it is so. But he never makes an assertion unless he is convinced that it is irrefutable, and he never predicts a victory until he is satisfied there is no possibility of defeat. Today, he talks with the assurance and authority of a commander who has put his theories into practice and proved that they stand the test of war. General Montgomery is prepared for much hard fighting on the continent, but he does not expect a long, drawn-out struggle. He says, our bombing of Germany is very important. There is no doubt that about 40 of their big cities have been half laid in waste. Think what that would mean to us if it had happened here. It must have a big effect on their capacity, and we will carry on the war. Montgomery has made a deep study of war, but he has the gift of explaining his methods in simple words and homely phrases. When he makes a point, he usually repeats it and adds, there's no doubt about that. The secret. What is the secret of Montgomery's success in war? His own reply is that to be successful commander, you must study human nature. That, he says, is the background of everything I do. Montgomery's point of view is that a general is like a big businessman or the director of a factory. He has a certain amount of human material at his disposal. It is up to him to make the best use of it. A great art lies in finding out what people are best at and ensuring they are used in that way. I am absolutely certain of that. The same principle applies to individuals. No two are the same. I could write a book about that, says General Montgomery. I'm probably a most peculiar person myself. You must think ahead and ask yourself who will be the best for the next big job. Then begin to edge those people that way so they will be handy when the party begins. I knew 3 months beforehand that the Mareth battle would be the next really big business, and I began to plan in my own mind who would be the best chaps for it, to make certain that when the battle matured, the right people were in the right place. If you realize the importance of this, you succeed in war. If you don't, you fail. All the months when Montgomery was preparing for the invasion, he was busy traveling all over the country, visiting troops, getting to know every division in his command. The part every division will play in the invasion was thought out by him, although the army in general never realized it, long before D-Day. As the business goes along, he told us it may interest you to notice how the principle of the right man in the right job has been put into practice. Montgomery does not confine his study of human nature to his own troops. He considers the German, and he asks himself, what sort of chap is he? He has found he has 3 very definite characteristics. 1. He is very good technically in the use of his weapons. 2. He has a good eye for ground and cover. 3. His obedience is implicit. The Germans, says Montgomery, are a military race. We are not. We are a martial race, which is something quite different. The Germans play military games at schools. Boys attack and defend. This is how they get an eye for ground which stands them in good stead in battle. If you leave German soldiers in undisturbed possession of ground for a long time, they take a lot of shifting. The moral is, do not let them stay in one place too long. There, he says, Montgomery, you have got the German soldier, quite different from the British soldier. I believe you could sum it up in this way. The German is a person who likes to laugh at other people's misfortunes. The British soldier is quite a different sort of chap. He's quite prepared to laugh at his own misfortunes. While Montgomery finds that the German soldier is still fighting very well, he does not believe that the standard of the German higher leadership is as good as it was. Oh, now he's talking about Rommel. Let's see, what general to general. At the moment, of course, of all the German generals, Montgomery is most interested in Rommel, his old antagonist in North Africa. When he knew he would be facing up to him again, Montgomery began to ask himself, how will Rommel fight the battle? What will he do? I think, Montgomery told us, Rommel is too impulsive for the set-piece type of battle. I think his forte is disruption. I would say that Rommel would aim at defeating us on the beaches. Rommel is the sort of fellow who wants to get cracking in battle right away, and I think he will do so. That's what I feel. Anyway, it will be very interesting to see what he will do. Just talking about this so theoretically. Okay, let's see. Always General Montgomery stresses that the invasion is not a British show or an American show. It is a joint enterprise by a great Allied team. It is a great honor, he told us, to serve under an American command, and I do so willingly. I am getting to know the American soldier pretty well now, and I have the highest opinion of him. I doubt if any other 2 nations in the world could do what we are going to do, integrating themselves in such a way and going out to battle together. Tremendous credit is due to General Eisenhower. He has woven us together into one fighting army. That is a great thing, a very great thing. If you are not one fighting army, nothing happens. Montgomery is a great believer in personal contact. That is why he called the war correspondents together. I like, he told us, to know and see everybody who is going to do any business with me. You are definitely part of the fighting machine, absolutely. Nobody must be put into the picture until it is necessary they should be. There are too many people about today who know far too much about things of which they ought to know nothing. But it is terribly important that the people in the home countries of the Allies should know how their soldiers are getting on and what they are doing. I will guarantee you will be kept well posted when the moment is opportune. What he says goes. As I watched and listened to Montgomery, I began to understand the confidence the troops have in him. They know he never promises what he cannot fulfill. What Monty says goes. In spite of the confidence of his words, there is not a trace of boastfulness in his manner. He has none of the affectations of a man who courts popularity. He is sure of himself, sure of his troops, and sure of victory. We are going to win this match, he says. That is the great thing. And there we go. Montgomery and Eisenhower. All right. And then we've got a military correspondence, some non-military news, article about a Noel Coward play, another movie, war correspondent describing the attack. De Gaulle is in England. Let's read about de Gaulle. Charles de Gaulle, French resistance, who later became president of France. General de Gaulle has been in England for some days. He will make a broadcast to the people of France later in the day, said a BBC announcement this morning. King Haakon of Norway spoke to his people, telling them that the Allied invasion has started and liberation is coming near. A diplomatic correspondent writes, General de Gaulle has had conversations with Mr. Churchill and General Eisenhower. These talks, I understand, have been purely military, and questions of the administration of France as she is liberated and of the status of National Committee of French Liberation have not been discussed. So Charles de Gaulle goes on to rule France. He was a resistance leader, exiled, comes back in France to lead it afterwards. Rome article says this is a glorious event. Now, I don't know the timeline. I don't remember if Italy has already been restored at this point, but maybe we're going to find out here. Mr. Churchill, speaking on the liberation of Rome in the Commons today, said, "This is a memorable and glorious event which rewards the intense fighting of the last 5 months in Italy." Okay, so 5 months they've been fighting to try to take back Italy. After describing the Anzio bridgehead actions, he said that the losses on both sides there were heavy and comprised about 20,000 of the Allies and 25,000 of the enemy. The Allied troops, he continued, were received with joy by the population of Rome. The liberation of Rome means that we shall have the power to defend it from hostile air attack and to deliver it from the famine by which it was threatened. The Allied forces, with the Americans in the vanguard, are driving ahead northward in relentless pursuit of the enemy. Alexander's aim. The destruction of the enemy's army has throughout been General Alexander's aim. It is now being engaged at the same time along the whole length of the line as it attempts to escape to the north. It is hoped that the 20,000 prisoners already reported will be followed by further captures in the near future. In further reference to the fall of Rome, Mr. Churchill said it would be futile to attempt to estimate our final gains at present. It was our duty, however, to pay the warmest tribute of gratitude and admiration to General Alexander. In General Clark, the U.S. Army had found a fighting leader of the highest order, and the qualities of all the Allied troops had shown in a noble and an unjealous rivalry. So they're talking about generals fighting for Italy, two generals. I don't know why there's rivalry or what they're talking about. Let's continue on a little bit more on Italy. Battle to destroy Nazi goes on. With the capture of Rome, the Allied armies in Italy have brought another phase of the campaign to a most successful conclusion, says today Allied communique from Italy, which adds, the battle to destroy the enemy continues without pause. Troops of the Fifth Army are now crossing the Tiber at many places and have advanced some 5 miles beyond. Only weak resistance is being encountered at present in this sector. In the hills north of Highway 6, the enemy is still resisting strongly the troops of the 8th Army to cover his withdrawal. Polena Station and some mountain positions in that sector have been abandoned by the enemy. The air communique says aircraft and installations on airfields in the Po Valley were attacked by fighters. The MAAF flew about 2,400 sorties. Earlier messages said that Allied air squadrons were pounding Kesselring's retreat caravan for nearly 100 miles north. French troops of the 8th Army have occupied Tivoli on Highway 5. So maybe this is related to the thing. They've got the French soldiers not fighting in France so that they don't have to fight their own countrymen. A little article from the Germans. Today's German communique stated, last night, the enemy began his long-prepared attack on Western Europe, which was expected by us. Beginning with 2 heavy air attacks on our coastal fortifications, the enemy dropped airborne troops at several points on the French northern coast between Havre and Cherbourg. Also supported by strong naval forces, also landed from the sea. Bitter fighting is in progress on the coastal stretches attacked. Okay. All right. Well, there you have it. So, real paper from D-Day. My God, it's just almost impossible to imagine. All right, so a couple articles we didn't read, but for flavor. All right, now we can get to some documents. DJ Moneycut says the coded message is a little ambiguous. It could be taken to mean Kruger is the spy, but surely not. Surely you would, I mean, you should be more clear about what you're doing, but all of the messages back and forth have been eliminating people. So surely she's eliminating someone. All right, let's take a look at what we've got here. 10th of June, 1943, from Menzies to Stewart. I don't think we know who Stewart is. After briefing Churchill into Operation Soap Spuds, he's requested all military operations be provided with more appropriate names. Current standing orders from Churchill are that military operations should not be given frivolous names, and they should not be boastful or overconfident. All biblical names should also be replaced. Churchill has recommended sourcing names from Greek and Roman mythology, stars and constellations, famous racehorses, and British and U.S. war heroes. Please make changes accordingly to any active operations. Okay. So the Premier's got his hands in how you name operations. And here we've got some details. I've reviewed all active operations and made the following changes. Operation Leviticus goes to Equinox. Ezekiel goes to Spring. Now that's pretty interesting because Operation Ezekiel is to root out the spy. It's now named Operation Spring, and we have encountered Operation Spring in previous messages. This is June 1943. So if we go to our document, where's our list of operations? Operations. So look, Operation Spring was the dead bodies at Latimer. So apparently the dead bodies and the spies are the same, one and the same. So Operation Spring and Operation Ezekiel are the same operation. So they've decided they're related. Okay. That's interesting. Anything more to discuss? I don't think we know the other operations there. Oh, we got a new message. A new Russian message. Letter intercepted and copied. It appears our misinformation will be reaching Soviet controllers as planned. Translation. So they have decrypted this, so we don't have to. General Stefan Habich has impregnated local whore. British intelligences are using this to pressure him within interrogation. Okay, so if I'm reading this right, Jonathan has a point about Operation Spring. I'll take a look at that in a second. If I'm reading this right, the way I understand this is they've figured out who the spy is by 1944, September. They've made the spy think that this is true. It's not true. It's misinformation. But they've made the spy think that General Habich got a local whore pregnant. You know who that's going to be. That's going to be played by Lizzie, is going to pretend to be that person, I think. That's why she's disappeared into Germany. And British intelligence are using this to pressure him within interrogation. I see. Okay. So it's not that they've convinced Habich that this is true. I think this is going to be Habich is in on this. But they've convinced the spy that Habich is being pressured during interrogations with this story, and the spy has written this back to the spy's sources. But this is a Russian spy, we think. So actually, this isn't our Russian anymore, is it? Is it? I guess it is. It's just a different, seems like it's a different handwriting. I'm a little confused. Is this not our Cyrillic anymore? Where is our, well, there's our backwards N. Where's our N with our tilde? That was so common. I'm a little confused why this alphabet doesn't seem quite the same. Harry says it is Russian. Maybe it's the same alphabet. Okay, anyway, they've identified the spy or figured out how to give the spy bad information. But I think probably at this point they have identified the spy by 1944. And they're seeding this information for the escape of Habich with Lizzie, it seems. Okay, before I go to the next one, let me check in with the chat. John says, we should go back and read the message about Spring. I think it was bringing in Lizzie and Penny. Maybe it was always just about Spy and we misread it to be about the murders. Okay, that's a good question. Operation Spring. Did we record where we learned about it? We say here that it's the Telegraph document, but which box was that? Okay, here it is. Here's our Operation Spring. Male body found within grounds during excavation. Investigation underway. Suspect body believed to be that of Sergeant Percival Raper, first killed, we think. Military police informed. Operation Spring teams are informed. So maybe this isn't necessarily, well, they're informing the spy team about this. They think it might be relevant for them. So I suppose you could say that Operation Spring might not be specifically about the dead bodies. So maybe this is not, well, we know Operation Spring is looking for spy. I guess we're saying this is AKA Ezekiel. And then I guess what we're saying here is that they were notified about the dead bodies. We don't know if there's a separate team just looking into the dead bodies. I don't think so, though. So I think they're the other operation. The police are looking into the dead bodies, and Operation Spring got notified about them. Does that clarify anything? So we thought Operation Spring was the investigation into the dead bodies, but it turns out Operation Spring is Operation Ezekiel, the spy hunt, and they've been told about the dead bodies because they think they might be related. Okay. It is important to know that these papers are all from different times. You have to sort of pay attention that this is 1944 letter, and now here we are way back in probably, well, there is no year, but maybe in 1943. Okay, Kendrick to Townsend. Brugger and Harris have eliminated James Ward from the Trent Park personnel in question. Nair remains convinced the subject is based at Latimer. Meyer, that's Gretchen, right? Where's our list? Okay, so we're told that James Ward has been ruled out by Brugger and Harris. Brugger and Harris are the two at Trench Park who are in charge, who are on Operation Ezekiel. You see them there? Elliot Brugger and Tanya Harris. Okay, so the two people they trust at Trent Park have cleared James Ward. So let's make a note of that, but it's not being cleared by Lizzie and Penny, so we don't trust them as much. We'll put cleared by Trent Park, Brugger, and Harris. Okay, there's one more down. And then it says Meyer. Actually, Meyer isn't Amelia. Who is Meyer then? Oh yeah, it's Amelia Mazur and Gretchen Meyer. So Gretchen, the dead, disappeared girl, she... Okay, Gretchen Meyer. So this note says that Meyer, Gretchen, remains convinced the subject is based at Latimer House and is working with the local censoring department to ensure all communication from the base and surrounding area is reviewed for hidden codes. Okay, so Gretchen is on the case. She thinks the spy is at her place at Latimer. That's what's going to get her killed. Oof. Gretchen. It would be nice if we got access to Gretchen's diary. Okay, let's see. Here's a 2-page letter. May 1942, so early on. A coded message was recently handed into military police in London and forwarded onto the counterintelligence team as per standing orders. As you are aware, Churchill has ordered cessation of intelligence operations against the Soviet Union. However, as the note was written in Cyrillic and appeared to be in code, I forwarded it to Daniel Jones at Bletchley to provide a translation if at all possible. He decoded the message and advised that it was drafted in simple letter substitution code. The message itself appeared to contain intelligence which places its origin as coming from someone with restricted access at one of the three of these three counterintelligence sites. So we're just going a little bit backward in time. We already know all this, but we're seeing a little bit behind the scenes of when they found that Russian note and when they came to the conclusion that someone had to have information from one of these places. Security is of paramount importance. It would be imprudent of us to ignore the possibility of a Soviet spy within the ranks. I understand that Churchill remains resolute, and as a result, counterintelligence operations against the Soviet Union remain off limits. However, it is my opinion that we should not, through negligent inaction, permit this informer to continue distributing sensitive information to our allies. They should be identified and, if not detained or turned, then we should create misinformation to ensure the Soviet infiltrator cannot compromise our operational security. I've recommended recruiting a limited group of trusted individuals at all 3 sites, tasked with determining the source. Once identified, we can decide on a suitable course of action. Okay, and then there are the 6 right there that got picked. Gretchen Meyer and Catherine Townsend at Latimer, and Elliot Brugger and Tanya Harris at Trent Park, and Jocelyn Webb and Daniel Knox at Bletchley. Okay, 1942, Operation Ezekiel. Here we are continuing with the spy hunt. Gretchen Meyer has confirmed Amelia Mazar would be unable to code to a sufficient level in Russian to be the mole. We have therefore eliminated her from the inquiry. Meyer believes that the individual we are looking for could also be responsible for the disappearance of Percival Raper earlier this year. Sergeant Raper was reported AWOL in July this year by his commanding officer and has never been found. Okay. So Gretchen, who we... Is it possible Gretchen is our spy? No. It's not possible because messages got sent by Russian after Gretchen disappeared. Okay, so fine. Gretchen's not our spy. So Gretchen has come out and said it's not Amelia. Now, we already ruled out Gretchen because we said it would make no sense for Gretchen to be trying to find for Amelia to be trying to find the killer of Gretchen, and Amelia to be encouraging other investigations if she was the spy. But now we can also say that Gretchen ruled her out due to lack of code skills. So we got double reason to rule out Amelia. So we trust Amelia completely now, which we already did, really. Sergeant Raper reported AWOL in July. Do we already have that in our timelines? Let me check more timelines here. July 1942. No, we didn't. So let's stick that in. September, October, November. Okay, so 1942, July. Percival Raper disappeared. So remember, we think this is the one that maybe the spy didn't kill. Maybe the spy killed the others. So the question is, why in July of 92? What happened? Maybe it was even a total accident. Is that even possible? I guess it's possible. But boy, Perry says we are closing in on Carl. Unfortunately, we kind of are. There aren't that many people left. Joseph Kuipers, Steven Wines, Gunther Fischer, Albert Nowak, James Ward. But what was the thing? We just heard James Ward's name. What did we just hear James Ward's name? I'm sure of it. Here. Brugger and Harris have eliminated James Ward. Oh, I didn't record that, huh? Must not have recorded that in our list. Okay, so I thought I did, but apparently not. Okay, James Ward is... I thought I recorded that it was ruled out by the... I must have written it somewhere else. Because I know I eliminated by Trent Park team, Ruger and Harris. I know I wrote this somewhere. I must not have written it here, though. Where did I write it? I don't know where I wrote it. But wait, what's happening? I wrote a note about Gretchen being ruled out too. Are there two places where I've got information about the spies? Or is it reverting to previous edits? What's happening? I just filled out that Amelia was ruled out. Why is that not here? Can someone tell me what happened? Perry says, I think you have it in two places. Where's the other place that I have it then? Oh, here. We've got two entries for spies. Okay, that's very confusing. All right, so I knew I filled this out. All right, so let me do, no. I'm going to delete all this. That's a first on us. Okay, now we can go back up and work with our master list. Eliminated by Gretchen. No coding abilities. Okay. Anything else that I didn't write from the previous list? No. Okay. So Carl Neumann is still on our list, but Amelia, who we know, that's why it's bold. Just going to unbold her because she's now cleared. All right. And then this is a strike through. Where's my little Alt-Shift-5 should strike through. And then same thing here. I've got my little cheat sheet for Google Docs up on the wall here. All right, so Albert, Gunther, Stefan, Joseph, and Carl are our remainder ones. You also recently mentioned Novak. We didn't rule out Novak, did we? Someone will have to tell me if I've missed ruling out someone that I should have. That's absolutely essential. I don't think I remember having ruled out Novak, though. Okay, anyway, Gretchen says it can't be Amelia, so Amelia's out. Someone better clarify if it's true that Novak, that we saw information about Novak somewhere. Okay, here's a new operation that's new to us, 1944, Operation Alcade. Have rearranged occupants of rooms 4 to 6 at Latimer House. Room 6 is in line of sight for tunnel entrance. E. Phillips suggests we arrange for supplies to be brought in through the tunnel rather than direct to building the usual way while General Von Enns is in residence. We have started the process now so that the other generals in residence will see no change when Von Enns arrives. This should increase awareness of a second delivery route into the building. We will need to ensure General Von Enns is using bunk in direct line of sight to basement door. Suggest you brief Habich and Neumann of same before operation begins. E. Phillips remains unaware of Carl Neumann's involvement in the operation. I am aware the couple are dating. I have concerns this will cause issues once Jasmine House becomes involved in the operation. Okay, so this is filling in a little bit of gaps that we know about. Basically, they're setting up Von Enns to see the tunnel and materials being brought in through it. They want him to find out about the tunnel because that's going to be the escape route that they have him use. And we now get full confirmation that Habich is in on this, working with the British. We suggest you brief Haybitch and Neumann before the operation begins. So we suspected Haybitch was going to be on the side of the British, had turned, but now we know it for sure. And then here's our little foreshadowing that something bad's going to happen with Carl Neumann and Elizabeth once he walks into the Jasmine operation. Only one more letter here for us today. October 1944. Operation Jasmine, from Menzies to Kendrick. One of the active team from Jasmine has confirmed a pregnancy. Ursula Graf is unsure of the father. She is unwilling to terminate the pregnancy. There are 3 generals at Trent Park and 1 at Latimer House who have all spent time with Miss Graf at Jasmine. Of the 4, I believe General Vogel is most suitable for Operation Candid. He has a wife in Germany with whom he has no children, and intelligence indicates she may be unable to bear a child. He has previously been involved with the stud farms in Germany, but is becoming disillusioned with the Nazi Party and the Fuhrer's leadership. I've outlined Operation Candid in broad terms, and Miss Graf has indicated an interest. Permission to brief her fully into the operation and obtain her consent. So we thought this is a little strange because it sounded to me like the whole pregnancy thing was fake misinformation. But here they say, because they say letter intercepted, it appears our misinformation will be reaching Soviet controllers. And the fake information is that General Haybitch has impregnated a local whore and that Haybitch is being pressured. And I guess that's the fake information. The real information is that Ursula Graf, prostitute, got pregnant, and it's probably General Vogel's kid. But here they say he's becoming disillusioned with Nazi Party. All right, let's add this to our list of operations since it clearly is important. But I'm a little confused about de-indent is that. Okay. We have operation. Oh, what was the other operation? Alcade. What's Operation Alcade? This is in our box 8. Von N's escape is Operation Alcade. These are both, this one's the spy catching. This one is continuing for Operation Jasmine. Okay, let me check in with the chat. What is the chat trying to say? We might want to add to the notes all the new operation names. Yeah, I mean, that was Alcade. Let's see if we have any others here. Ezekiel is continuing. This is not an operation. Operation Ezekiel. Oh, here are the others. Okay, I'm not going to write all these out because we haven't seen any of these others, but I am going to make a note here in our documents. The box 8 document on other operation names. I guess I'll list them here. Leviticus is Equinox. I guess I'm breaking my rule. I am writing them out here. Ezekiel is spring. Andy Foss is Libra. Custard is Tosca. Hopscotch is Nelson. Okay. Chad says, I thought the list was showing how to rename current operations. Well, it was, but most of them that they're renaming are not in most of the operations we know about are not in violation. Just these couple are. He doesn't like them being biblical, and he doesn't like them being trivial, being jokey. So he names them this way. All right. So this is the interesting thing, how Ursula Graff lady is pregnant with General Vogel's baby, and they're going, and he's sympathetic, so they're going to try to flip him. And they're calling that Operation Candid. Ah, that's the one I wanted to write down. Operation Candid. Almost missed that one. Operation Candid. And this is General Vogel. Got Ursula pregnant, friendly to the Allies. So we don't know what they're planning to do with that operation, but they do seem to have used that information here to plant some fake information, though the dates are a little odd. September is when they plant the fake information, and October is when they learn about a real pregnancy. That's a little bit confusing. Maybe there's a whole bunch of pregnancies going on. All right. DJ Moneycut says, I don't think they're saying it's definitely Vogel's baby, just that he's most likely to flip if they pretend. That's an interesting point. Let me read this again. 3 generals and 1 at Latimer who have all spent time with Miss Graff. So 4 potentials. Of the 4, I believe General Vogel is most suitable for Operation Candid. That's a very good point. Okay, I think DJ Money got, I don't know if it'll be significant, but it is a very good point. He may not necessarily be the father. I'm just going to put it like this. Vogel is identified as a target regarding Ursula pregnant. And then friendly towards the Allies. So you're right. He may not be the father, but for their purposes, he may be the person to tell that he's the father. It's just a little bit strange. These two are strange going together. I'm going to put these together so that we don't lose track of how tied they are. The dates are weird, though. This one would seem like it would come after this one. I thought for a minute that this might be it occurred to me that this might be the fake letter, like the fake document that they planted for the spy to discover. But they wouldn't talk about Jasmine, and they wouldn't talk about these code names, so I don't think it is. And the order is wrong. Oh, this comes first. Okay. All right. Well, only 2.5 hours for this session, and one hour was newspaper, 1 hour was documents. We did get another piece of our Enigma machine knockoff. And we did rule out a couple more people. We got some very emotional newspaper articles about D-Day. Pretty cool session, I have to say. John says, should we translate the Russian note even if we think we know what it says? That's an interesting point. I really don't think it's likely to be any different, but you're right. If we suspect the Townsend of possibly being the spy, it would be fascinating if she mistranslated it on purpose. Well, maybe we'll do that offline now that we know the procedure. And now that this writing feels less likely to result in typos, maybe we'll translate this offline. If someone in the chat wants to also OCR it and work on it, here's a nice, clear, straight image of it if you want to try it. Maybe in the Discord, we'll try to do what we did before. It's not a bad idea. I mean, Jonathan is being smart. If the spy is the person who translated it, they could be sneaking it through. That would be, we should also say, though, that would be extremely risky. If Townsend was the spy and mistranslated this on purpose, that would be an instant way to get caught. And then Jonathan says, does anyone remember hearing anything about Novak? That was the idea, that maybe we saw Novak's name. I think maybe Perry was misremembering Neumann instead of Novak. Neumann is Carl's last name, and we do see his name mentioned. I don't think Novak was mentioned in these letters from today. And he's not the sender or receiver of any of these. So I think maybe Perry saw Neumann and thought it was Novak. All right. The plot is really thickening, but it does feel like we are sort of in a standard situation here where people are being eliminated one by one. We're pretty passive in this capacity. We're just listening to them as we get more information about who's eliminated. And we're sort of like biting our nails, hoping it's not Carl. We'll see. All right, so Perry says, Jesse, remind me of what date Lizzie disappeared. Lizzie disappeared. Lizzie, our girl, disappeared. She was found, her body was found dead in our first box. She didn't disappear, she died. But we don't think she's really dead. So we have her death certificate for March 1945. But then we've got the postcard, which says, I'm alive in Germany. And that postcard is timestamped for dated at August. So she was Townsend is the one that signed for her saying, I saw her body, she died in rubble in March, but she's actually on a secret assignment. So that's that. So Lizzie is alive and well in Germany, or she was. All right. Well, we're going to end it here. And tomorrow, which is today, at 3 p.m. in 14 hours, we'll have our play-by-mail session of Dear Homes, where we read letter 3 of the missing relic. What is it called? Stolen relic? The stolen relic, letter 3, at 3 p.m. And then we will be back again playing the next box, box 9 of the Hidden Listener, Sunday evening. I'm going to schedule that as soon as we finish here. Nice manageable box, but still full of interesting stuff. It feels like the boxes are a little bit, they're sort of slotting into place. We're sort of filling out these pictures across a wide time frame more and more now. Rather than getting so much new information, we're filling in blanks. Okay, I will see you all tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow night.